Somewhere in the open ocean right now, in water so deep and so blue that no light reaches the bottom, there is a heart beating. It is the size of a small car. It weighs about 180 kilograms, and with every slow, powerful beat, it pushes a wave of blood through vessels wide enough for a human child to crawl inside. That heart belongs to the largest animal that has ever lived on planet Earth. Not the largest alive today, the largest ever. Bigger than any elephant, bigger than any shark, and bigger, as far as we can tell, than the greatest dinosaurs that ever walked the land. It is the blue whale, and almost everything about it sounds like an exaggeration until you stand next to the numbers. A big blue whale can stretch close to 30 meters from nose to tail. That is longer than a basketball court. It can weigh between 150 and 190 tons, which is more than a fully loaded passenger jet. Its tongue alone can weigh as much as an entire elephant. A human being could stand inside its mouth. Its main artery is so wide you could almost fit your head into it. And this staggering creature moves through the sea not by fighting the water, but by belonging to it, gliding with a slow grace that hides just how enormous it truly is. This is the story of how life on this planet built the biggest body it has ever made, why it could only happen in the ocean, and the strange, precise limits that even a giant like this cannot escape. Let's start with the comparison everyone reaches for. Dinosaurs. When we picture something impossibly big, we picture the long-necked giants, the sauropods that shook the ground 100 million years ago, and they were genuinely colossal. The largest of them, animals like Gigantinosaurus, are estimated to have weighed somewhere between 70 and 100 tons. That is a monster by any measure. But the blue whale, at up to 190 tons, is heavier still. The heaviest land animal that ever lived would have looked up, in a manner of speaking, at the whale in the sea. And that raises the real question, the one that this whole story turns on. Why? Why did the single largest body in the history of life appear in the ocean and not on land? Why is the record holder a creature of water? The answer begins with a force we almost never think about, because it never lets us go. Gravity. On land, every animal has to carry its own weight against the pull of the earth, and that weight grows brutally fast as a body gets bigger. Double the length of an animal, and its mass goes up roughly eightfold. But the bones and muscles that have to support that mass do not keep pace. At some point, the legs simply cannot hold the body up. The skeleton would have to become so thick and so heavy that the animal could barely move. This is the ceiling that land life keeps running into. The dinosaurs pushed right up against it with hollow bones and clever architecture, and even they hit a wall. On land, gravity is the tax that gets bigger every single day, and eventually no body can afford it. There is a second problem on land that we forget as well. Heat, blood, and breathing all scale against you when you get too big. A land giant has to pump blood up a long neck against gravity, has to move a mountain of muscle just to take a step, and has to shed the heat that mountain generates without a way to easily dump it. Every one of those problems gets harder the larger the body becomes. The sauropods were the great experiment in how far a land animal could push all of this at once, and the fact that they never got heavier than around 100 tons tells you how firm that wall really is. Life on land tried, over and over, for tens of millions of years, and it kept hitting the same invisible limit. Now put that same body in the sea, and the tax almost disappears. Water is dense, nearly 1,000 times denser than air, and it pushes back. A body immersed in water is buoyed up, held, cradled by the fluid around it. The whale is very close to weightless in its own element. It does not need massive pillars for legs because it never has to stand. It does not need a heavy reinforced skeleton to fight gravity because the ocean is doing that work for free. The sea, in effect, lifts the ceiling off, freed from the crushing arithmetic of weight on land. A body can keep growing far past anything a leg could ever support. Scientists call this aquatic gigantism, and the blue whale is its masterpiece. The very same size that would collapse under its own weight on a beach is effortless in deep water. Take a blue whale out of the ocean and the miracle becomes a tragedy. Stranded on land, its own mass begins to crush its lungs and organs, and it can die simply from being big in the wrong place. It is a giant that only works where the water can hold it. So the ocean makes such a size possible, but possible is not the same as inevitable. Being able to grow huge does not explain why this particular animal actually did. And here the story turns from physics to food. Because to build the biggest body ever, you need one more thing. You need a way to feed it that is almost unbelievably efficient. And the blue whale, the largest predator on the planet, hunts some of the smallest prey in the sea. It eats krill, tiny shrimp-like creatures, most no longer than your thumb, drifting in vast clouds in the cold, rich waters of the world. A blue whale does not chase individual animals the way a shark or a killer whale does. It has no teeth at all. Instead, hanging from its upper jaw are hundreds of plates of baleen, a tough, bristly, comb-like material that acts as a giant sieve. And the way the whale uses that sieve is one of the most extraordinary feeding actions in all of nature. It is called lunge feeding, and it turns the whale, for a few seconds, into one of the most powerful living machines on Earth. The whale accelerates toward a dense swarm of krill and opens its mouth to an enormous gape. As it does, the grooved, pleated skin of its throat unfolds and balloons outward like a vast, expanding pouch. In a single lunge, a blue whale can engulf a volume of water and krill that is larger than its own body. Think about that for a moment. An animal the size of a jet swallows a mouthful bigger than itself. Then it closes its mouth, and using its house-sized tongue and the muscles of that pleated throat, it pushes all that water back out through the baleen. The water streams away. The krill are trapped on the bristles, and the whale swallows a living harvest in a single gulp. This is the secret engine behind the size. Filter feeding on krill is astonishingly efficient. The whale spends a burst of energy on the lunge, and in return it captures an amount of food far greater than the effort cost. It is like being paid many times over for a single, explosive push. No land hunter chasing prey one animal at a time could ever gather energy that fast. This is what makes a 190-ton body payable. The ocean removes the weight limit, and the krill provide the fuel, and between them they open the door to the largest animal in the history of life. But there is a beautiful, subtle catch hidden inside that lunge, and modern science has only recently teased it out. A team of researchers led by the biologist Jeremy Goldbogen and his colleagues, in a study published in 2019, tagged whales of many different sizes and measured, second by second, how much energy each animal spent on a lunge and how much food it took in. What they found is one of the most elegant results in the study of giants. As a filter-feeding whale gets bigger, its mouth gets bigger too, so each lunge captures even more krill relative to the cost. Bigger is, in energy terms, better, up to a point. But the lunge itself has a price. Opening that enormous mouth into oncoming water creates tremendous drag, and it costs the whale precious oxygen it is holding in a single breath. Beyond a certain size, the numbers stop working. The food is only there in dense enough clouds for so long, and a single breath hold only lasts so long, and the drag of an ever larger mouth eventually eats into the gains. The research suggests there is an efficiency sweet spot, and the blue whale sits right near the top of it. In other words, the blue whale may be close to the largest a lunge-feeding animal can practically be. It is not just enormous by accident. It sits at a finely balanced peak, where the physics of the ocean, the density of its prey, and the mechanics of a single breath all meet at the same point. And that giant does not begin its life full-grown. In fact, the beginning of a blue whale is one of the most astonishing growth stories anywhere in biology. A newborn calf is already around 7 meters long and can weigh 2 or 3 tons at birth. But that is only the start. Drinking nothing but its mother's milk, a milk so rich and fatty it has the consistency of a thick paste, the calf can gain around 90 kilograms a day. Every single day, roughly the weight of a grown adult human added to its body. Hour after hour it swells, feeding almost constantly, and in its first year it can grow to more than double its birth length. Nothing else in the animal kingdom grows this fast. It is as if the whale is in a hurry to reach the safety that only size can give. And it works. Once a blue whale is fully grown, it is so large that it has almost no natural predators at all. The ocean is full of hunters, but there is very little that can threaten an adult blue whale. Its size is not only a wonder, it is a fortress. And size gives the blue whale one more power, one you cannot see, only feel. Its voice. Blue whales produce some of the loudest sounds made by any animal on the planet. Deep pulses and moans pitched so low that much of their power lies below the range of human hearing. These are ultra-low frequency calls, and low-frequency sound has a remarkable property. It travels. Sound moves through water far faster and far further than it does through air, and the lower the pitch, the less it fades with distance. In the deep ocean, these calls can carry for enormous distances, potentially hundreds of kilometers, rolling through the water long after the whale that made them has moved on. Across the vast emptiness of the open sea, where a mate or a rival might be a whole day's swim away, the blue whale reaches out not with its eyes but with its voice, filling the water with a sound so deep it feels more like a pressure in the chest than a note in the ear. And there is something quietly strange buried in those calls. Over recent decades, scientists listening to blue whales around the world have noticed that the pitch of their songs has been slowly, steadily drifting downward, dropping a little lower with each passing generation. Nobody is completely certain why. It may be tied to their recovery in numbers or to changes in the ocean itself. It is one more open question in a life we are still learning to read. But the fact remains that the largest animal that ever lived also makes some of the largest sounds, calling across an ocean that would swallow almost anything smaller in a voice we are only just beginning to understand. So here is a creature that had everything, a body lifted beyond all limits by the sea, a feeding trick of almost perfect efficiency, growth faster than anything else alive, a voice that crosses oceans. For millions of years, the blue whale ruled the deep simply by being unimaginably large and almost impossible to threaten, and then, in a single century, it nearly vanished. Because one predator finally appeared that its size could not protect it from us. For most of history, humans could not touch the blue whale. It was too big, too fast, and it sank when it was killed, so early whalers left it alone. But in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, new technology changed everything. Faster steam-powered ships could chase it down, the explosive harpoon could kill it, and factory ships could process a whale the size of a building at sea. Suddenly the largest, most valuable animal in the ocean was within reach, and the slaughter that followed is staggering to describe. Over the 20th century, more than 200,000 blue whales were killed. In some parts of the world, well over 99% of the entire population was wiped out. An animal that had cruised the oceans since long before humans existed was pushed, in just a few decades, to the very edge of disappearing forever. The biggest heartbeat in the history of life was very nearly stopped. It was only when blue whales became so rare that they were barely worth hunting that the killing finally slowed, and international protection arrived in the middle of the 20th century. Since then, in the quiet decades that followed, the blue whale has been trying to come back, and in some regions it slowly is. Populations that were reduced to a few hundred animals are, in places, showing signs of recovery, a scattering of giants returning to seas that had gone silent. But recovery for an animal like this is agonizingly slow. Blue whales grow slowly, they breed slowly. A female may give birth only once every 2 or 3 years, and the ocean they are returning to is not the one they left. It is warmer, noisier, and busier with ships. The blue whale survived being the biggest target on the planet, but its future is still fragile, still balanced on the edge. And it is worth being honest here, because the science of the blue whale is still very much alive and unfinished. We do not have a perfect count of how many remain, Because they are so rare, so wide-ranging, and spend so much of their lives beneath the surface, even the largest animal on Earth is remarkably hard to study. The exact upper limit of how big a blue whale can grow, the precise reasons the size peaked where it did, the full story of how their populations are changing, these are questions that researchers are still working on, tagging whales, listening to their calls across whole ocean basins, and slowly filling in the picture. The blue whale is not a solved mystery. It is a giant we are still coming to understand. But what we do know is enough to stop you in your tracks. Somewhere out in the deep blue, right now, a body longer than a basketball court is moving through the dark, powered by a heart the size of a car, sieving whole clouds of tiny krill through a mouth that can swallow more than its own weight in a single gulp, calling to others of its kind in a voice too low for us to hear, carrying across the sea. It is the largest thing life has ever built, made possible by the water that holds it, and it came within a hair's breadth of being gone before we ever truly understood what we almost lost. So here is what we want to know from you. Of everything about this animal, what stays with you the most? Is it the heart the size of a small car, the single gulp that swallows more than the whale's own body, the calf that gains 90 kilograms in a day, or the fact that this giant, which nothing in the sea could ever threaten, was nearly wiped out by us in a single century? Tell us in the comments. And if this changed the way you picture the ocean, stay with us, because the deep is full of impossible things that turn out to be true.